Hey guys, Simon here from Top Tennis Training, and in this video I want to help you hit the perfect shot, the clean shot. So if you've been playing well, you'll know that you're hitting the ball normally around the sweet spot on the racket. If you're not playing so well, you're probably hitting the edges of the racket or even the frame itself. Now there's nothing worse than hitting the outside of the strings or the frame. You feel like you're just not very good at tennis. But when you hit it in the middle, in that sweet spot, you feel perfect and you feel like you get that effortless power time and time again. So what makes us hit the ball in the middle and what makes us hit the ball on the edges? Now from day to day, the conditions will change when you're playing tennis. One day you might play with older balls, the next day you might play with new balls. So the timing is going to be completely different, and for you to hit that ball in the middle is going to be a lot harder. One day you might play on a clay court and the next day you might play on a hard court. Again, the bounce is going to be different, the conditions are going to be different, so it's very hard to find that sweet spot every day when the conditions keep changing. That's one of the reasons that tennis is so hard to master, because the conditions are always changing, the balls are always changing, and the opponent that we're playing is always changing. But there are a few things that you can do to help yourself really hit that sweet spot time and time again, even when the conditions are changing. The first thing that you're going to try and do is see the ball as early as possible coming off your opponent's strings. So as soon as you see the ball coming either to your forehand or to your backhand, you're going to start that shoulder preparation, that unit turn, and you're going to start your preparation for that swing. This will buy yourself time, and creating time is one of the most important elements in tennis. So as soon as you see if it's a forehand or a backhand, the first thing you're going to do, you've done your split step, you see it's coming to the forehand, turn your body sideways on. You see it's coming to your backhand, turn your body sideways on. Give yourself time by really preparing early, and this will help you later in the swing. If the ball comes to this side, Alex shouts out forehand. If the ball comes to this side, Alex shouts out backhand. And I'm looking for him to shout it out as quickly as possible. The best players in the world, they're going to call it out just as I feed. Some players who are really good at reading the racket and the body, they might even be able to tell you where the ball is going before I've even made contact, just from my body position. But what we're looking for, if you're a high-level club player, you want to call it out before it passes the net. If you're just starting out in the game, you might call it just before the bounce or when it's around the service line on your side. So let's take a look. Backhand. Forehand. Forehand. So once again, you're watching the ball come off your opponent's racket, and as early as possible, you're starting that preparation for either the forehand or the backhand. So now you've done your split step, you've recognized that the ball's coming either to your forehand or your backhand, and you've done that preparation. Now the next step is then tracking that ball all the way from your opponent's string until it bounces on your side, so over the net, passing the service box on your side, bouncing and then coming back up. Now it's one of the most common pieces of advice that you'll ever hear. Watch the ball. Watch the ball in tennis. Your coach might have told you this millions of times. I tell this to my students all the time. But what does it really mean to watch the ball? So for a beginner, watching the ball might just mean they see the ball as a blur and they just see it coming towards them. They're not really engaged in that ball fully. They're not really focused on seeing every aspect of that ball. How it's spinning. Is it moving quite quick? What's going to happen after the bounce? Whereas for a player like Federer or Nadal, because they've been playing the game for so many years, they've mastered watching that ball perfectly with deep concentration. And this is what you want to be trying to do in your own game. So don't just see the ball, really zone in on focusing on that ball perfectly the whole way from your opponent's strings until the bounce, and then after the bounce up to your own racket. Now the next step is then seeing the contact point on your own racket. So a lot of coaches will say you don't have to watch the contact point, and it's a thing that a lot of people have debated online. But you have to ask yourself one thing: what benefit do you get from not watching the ball until it hits your strings? Now the contact point happens so quickly, it happens in a matter of milliseconds. But what benefit do you get from lifting your eyes up and looking at your target as opposed to actually watching the ball come up to your strings and then come off your strings. Even if you don't see the impact point, the contact point, even if you can't see it with the naked eye, it's better to watch the ball bouncing, coming up to your strings, rising up, hitting your strings. Even if you don't see the impact point, you're watching it all the way until it hits the racket, and then you're watching it fly off. This is much better, in my opinion, than watching where you're trying to hit the ball, because the thing that's going to happen, you're going to lift your head up, you're going to end up hitting the edges of the strings or the frame. But by watching that ball rising up to the racket, you're giving yourself the best chance to hit a clean shot. And this is what we want to do. So you'll get a lot more benefit from watching the ball rising up to your strings and coming off your strings, even if you don't see the contact point, than looking up and looking at where you're trying to hit the ball. By looking up, you're losing your focus on that ball. Now, there is no contact with the opponent, there's no contact with the other side of the court. The only thing that you're actually making contact with is the ball. And this is why your eyes should be locked on that ball the whole way during a point, during a rally. And this is something that takes a lot of work, but the better you get at it, you'll see the results on the court. So go out there and work on those three things, and hopefully you'll see a big difference with reducing the shanks in your tennis and hitting more in the sweet spot. So a quick recap. Step number 1, watching the ball coming off your opponent's strings and preparing as early as possible with that shoulder turn. Step number 2, tracking the ball all the way from your opponent's strings until it bounces and rises up to your own racket. And step number 3, trying to see the ball hit your strings and come off your strings. Go out there and work on it, and I guarantee you'll see a big difference in your contact points. All the best, guys. Thanks for watching the video. If you have liked the video, click that like button, leave a comment down below, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and all the best, guys, from sunny Miami. See you soon.